I've always been concerned, and still to this day, with the who you are and how you go about, that coming to fruition. And so none of our differences to me made a difference.
Welcome to the Cannonball Mindset, and this is the second time, maybe third interview that I've had and guests that I've had on the podcast that I have known more years than I've been married. Like I've been with you. So I'm sitting with Arnold Greene, Chief Capital Officer. Did I get this right?
Chief Human Capital Officer.
Chief Human Capital Officer. Extraordinary. I don't even know how to describe you because you're a friend from back in the day that's been friends 25 years. It's just amazing human being. And so when I look for guests on the podcast, I'm like, who brings value? Who can bring value to the people that listen? And I look through my life and I say, who are the people that brought value in my life? And I recently had a great friend, Steve, on that you know. And then I'm like, I gotta get Arnold Greene on. And getting you on the calendar is like, man, I bet I could have got the Pope faster than I got you. Like getting this guy's schedule, because he's everybody wants a little bit of Arnold Greene. But I'm sitting with Arnold Greene, Chief Human Capital Officer, but even more so, just a great friend. And I'm about ready to tear it up for an hour or so, however long, and get people to hear the value you bring. And I know it. I know by the end of this conversation, people are going to be like, and there's been episodes that I've been like, gosh, people just resonate with, and people are going to, I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but they're going to resonate with this one.
We're going to have some fun. And before we get started, man, I brought my handkerchief with me because I am so proud of you, man. Since you were 19 years old, man, we've known each other, and to see your progression and your trajectory and just the wonderful things that you've done, man, just makes me just immensely proud. I got emotional earlier today getting ready for this, but now I'm pumped.
You ready?
I'm excited. I'm ready to sit down.
Listen, I'm about ready to cut the podcast short because that shit's all I needed right there. Like that's going to be making some social promo clips like a mother. That's awesome. So I appreciate you. Yeah. So let's start. I'm saying let's start. Let's go back further because you're a Cornell graduate. Yes. Grew up in Queens. Grew up in the streets of Queens. I just asked you before we started recording, how does that happen? Like, and it's not like it doesn't happen. I get that. Like, it doesn't mean if you're born in Queens you can't go to Cornell. But you're like, when I hear like how people rise to it, I'm always fascinated with where they started here, because I think a lot of people have this idea when you go to a school like Cornell, you go to some of these top schools that, man, it was destined. Their parents probably went there. They probably got a free ride because they knew somebody. That's not your story.
No, that's not my story. And, I would say I was very fortunate early on. Chad grew up in South Ozone Park, Queens. Didn't have a lot of resources, finances, money. My father, I think I was 7 or 8 when he finally graduated from college. Went back after working for a little bit. But what was imparted in me early, and I was fortunate to have and still have wonderful parents. But my mom always imparted in me, son, you don't have to be the best, but be your best, right? Mm-hmm. And so every single day, it was this routine of thinking, Arnold, what can you do to be your best, right? So I wasn't necessarily competing with others. I was just trying to be the best and the most authentic me. And so it started with that belief that I needed to be my best, and all the God-given talents that I had needed to, use them to the best of my ability. And then, a poignant moment in my life for the first through fifth grade, somehow, because again, we didn't have a lot of resources, my family was able to afford to send me to private school. I don't know if I got scholarships. I don't know if it was a hook a brother up. I don't know.
I don't think they have a hook a brother up package.
All right,
if they do, I need to get that shit. I got two girls that need the hook a brother up package.
But so for 4 or 5 years, went to private school, was able to benefit from an educational standpoint by going there. But then in 6th grade, something happened where we were no longer able, my parents were no longer able to afford to send me or sacrifice to send me to private school or get the hook a brother up special anymore. And in 6th grade, I talked to my kids and my beautiful wife, Donnie, who is here with me now.
Everybody needs a Donisha in their life, right?
Not everybody. I need one.
Everybody.
You
I walk in. I ain't seen her in but a minute. I walk in. She gives me a big old hug like she saw me yesterday. Hey, you want something to eat? Like, come on in. Don't mess up my house, Chad. But everybody needs some of that now.
That's Donnie. But I remember in 6th grade, I ended up having to go to public school. And my neighborhood public school was not the best. And somehow my parents enabled me to go to a public school in a totally different district, Whitestone, Queens, right? And in 6th grade, I met, outside of my mom, my dad, and now my wife, probably the most important person in my life, and that's Miss Sally Berkowitz, my 6th grade teacher. I was there, Chad, for about 2 or 3 weeks, the new kid in the school. There weren't a lot of kids that looked like me, quite frankly, at that school. And about my 3rd weekend, I'll never forget her pulling me aside. And she says, Arnold, how are you feeling about school? And I was like, all right, Miss Berkowitz. And she says, Arnold, I want you to remember this one thing. You're better than you think you are. Mm. And that was, for me, coming from hearing early in my life, be your best. And then hearing from a lady that had only known me for 3 weeks or so, saying, you're better than you think. So even what I was thinking was my best was just not enough. There was more to go in. And the influence she put on me through my 6th grade. 6th grade was the most powerful year educationally for me. Because she then encouraged me to apply to a specialized high school, Hunter High School. And Ms. Berkowitz, you want me to apply to Hunter High School? Arnold, you're better than you think. I applied, long story short, got into Hunter High School, went to Hunter High School from 7th grade to 12th grade, some great times there and great community there, people from all socioeconomic levels. I was traveling an hour and a half, 2 hours one way to go to school, bus and train, a commitment to that. But that, when you ask me, how does one get to Cornell? It started with my parents telling me, Arnold, be your best, my mom in particular. It then transitioned to Ms. Berkowitz saying, you're better than you can even imagine, than you think you are. And so setting a new a dynamic or a new level for me. But also it was just this level of impartation into me, this level of somebody believing in me more than I probably at that time, Chad, believed in myself. And so that kind of facilitated, I would say, mentally, the opportunity for me to even think about, schools like a Cornell. But even then, I wasn't going to go to Cornell, but once again, someone else imparted into my life, Avis Hinkson. She was the admissions, one of the admissions counselors at Cornell. In my junior year of high school, during the summer, she came, we went to the same church, and she said, Arnold, what are you going to do for education? I don't know. I mean, where are you going to apply? You should apply to Cornell. Cornell.
You're still in Queens at that point,
still
right?
In Queens, Cornell. And once again, it was just another person that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I applied and got into Cornell, go Big Red, and one of the best 4 years of my life. And, nothing but, favor and, I would say God's plan for my life personally.
Wow. Wow, that's there's a lot there. And the idea that what I want to talk about is that 2 hours on the train.
Yeah.
2 hours on the train. Yeah. Like, the question I ask a lot of people all the time when I'm doing workshops or sales workshops or leadership workshops or mindset workshops is, how bad do you want to be great?
Yeah.
How bad do you want to be great, right? And that pushes that test right there, right? Like, do you want to be great enough that you will get on a train for 2 hours just to get an education that might be better than the education you can get, but you can get 5 minutes from your house?
Absolutely, man. And, I would say even with that, even if you think you should sacrifice to go an hour and a half, 2 hours, bus and train as I had to one way, I still believe that you need others to believe in you. So one of my favorite parts of my 2-hour journey was when I started, since Hunter High School technically started in middle school, they would assign to you someone in your relative area to help you get to school, right? So they would meet you typically at the train station, etc. So my 2 big brothers, Lucian Tin, who is now the vice president of marketing with TrackPhone, and someone that many of us know as Young MC, Marvin Young, were my big brothers.
Wow.
Right? So they would meet me at the train station.
How the hell did I not know that shit?
Come on, man.
Because we on big brother.
We on this a Cannonball moment, man.
This is 25 years later. You telling me my big brother was Young MC?
Yeah. I mean, and so Marvin, Young MC. Marvin was 3 years ahead of me. Lucian 10 was 2 years ahead of me. But every day for my first year, they met me at 169th Subway. And they were religiously there, on time, accountability partners per se, that aided me even in days where I was like, man, I don't want to take this ride, or we can get back on the bus and go home, or we can play hooky or whatever. I don't, old school word.
Nobody knows what hooky is.
Right, we can cut school.
You just showed your age.
Yeah, I know. I'm aging myself.
You may have aged yourself by saying Young MC.
Well, there you go.
If you don't know who Young MC is, then you have no business listening to this podcast. Well, no. Just Google them, you'll know how awesome it is. Don't stop listening to the podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, so even during that period of time, accountability and having people that believed in you. I mean, 2 teenage young fellas that, I mean, for whatever reason took that role on, because you didn't have to be a big brother, but they decided to take that role on. And to this day, Marvin and Lucian was here over Labor Day. I mean, we're still great friends.
I need to invite to that party. I'm gonna show him how to bust a move. I'm just telling him. I'm gonna show him.
For those of you that don't know, Chad is an incredible dancer.
I will shake a rump. Don't put that out there. Don't be putting my shit out there on the line. So yeah, don't be putting my shit out there with my dancing moves, because that's my secret weapon. Like, I seem like this big immobile tree. I was running this morning. I'm here in Texas, so I woke up this morning, I went for a run. And you can run over the freeways here, which is crazy, like the sidewalks that go atop the freeways. It's crazy. So I'm running, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna run over this freeway. It's like an 8-lane freeway, right? And I'm running over, it's 5:30 in the morning, and there's tons of cars out, and I'm thinking, I wonder what these people are thinking right now, seeing this big 6'8" tree move down the center of the freeway. Like, it takes people by surprise. I'm sure people are locking their doors too if they're sitting at the lights or anything. But so you still, this is what I think people are going to find through this interview. You said that was, how many years ago was that? How many years ago was that you had those big brothers standing there, like accountability partners?
30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
But yet, 30 years later, you're still connected with them.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that I believe come into your life for a specific reason and a season, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I've always been one to count it as an honor, feel fortunate when others take any time to help me, to assist me, to impart into me. I quite honestly honor those individuals, right? And will, move forward to a gentleman that connected us that I still honor to this day. But I know people don't have to do that, and quite frankly, people don't make it a habit to help assist others. People don't make it a habit to see something in someone and not just think it, right? Because I can think, as I did when I first met Chad. Chad has incredible potential. Chad is a phenomenal individual. Chad has the ability to influence and persuade, and Chad has the ability to be, and I'll call it the power of authenticity. I knew that about you, but you have to take that a step further, and you have to, in my opinion, share that with that person to either confirm it for them or to help them maybe understand they have something that they didn't even know that they had. And so, Lucian and Marvin and Mrs. Berkowitz and, my mom, they could have kept it here. Hey, we think Avis Hinkson, we think he has potential. We think he can do something, quote unquote, in life. But they fed it to me. They helped me to believe. And so with that, I've tried to spend the better part of my life reciprocating and doing that for others, right?
So why do you think? I love that. I love that whole notion, because I think you're so dead on. It's a matter of, I think people see it. They see greatness, and I think that greatness lies in all of us, not just some of us. I think that there's no God that I believe in, regardless of what your faith is. My faith says there's no God that creates people less than.
That's right. That's right.
Different, but all with this DNA of greatness in you. And so it's not, you don't have to become great, you have to return to greatness. You have to embody this, right? You created great. Now it's just bringing it to the light.
Yeah.
And I think that people see it, but I think you're dead on. They don't help expose it in people. They don't help, do you know what I'm saying?
They don't help cultivate it.
They don't help cultivate it. Why do you think that is? Like, what is it? Listen, we'll talk about yours and I's relationship. When I started when I was 19, I think you were...
I was 24.
24, yeah, you're older than me, right? You're old.
24, 25.
Yeah, you're old, right? Oh,
I'm less young, Chad.
Yeah. I'm just saying, that's my point.
Respect your elders,
man. This is so awesome. But people see it, but they don't put themselves out. It takes a special individual to put themselves out there to say, I'm going to go the extra step to help cultivate and really embrace this in this person.
Yeah.
Why is that?
We unfortunately live in a world that typically is about me, right? Yeah. It's what can I do for me? How can I, increase my value, wealth, whatever for me? And also I think there's this notion of, I think there is something very powerful and for me personally very satisfying with seeing others around me being at their best and being successful. But I would tell you, I don't think many people genuinely, authentically want others to be successful.
Yeah.
And, I think when we can get to the point where we realize, listen, life, the world is this big pie, right? And I don't need the whole pie. I need my piece that, quite honestly, I believe God has ordained for me, and Chad has a piece, and Evan has a piece, and Donnie has a piece. And when we embrace that, then I'm not fighting for Chad's piece. I'm not in any way jealous of the success that my brother Chad has, and I want to see the best in Chad. It gives me I can't even tell you the pride and the satisfaction that I have. But I think, back to your question, I think it's this me notion that it's all about me. And I, one of the simple lessons my mother has shared with me, and another second mom, Aunt Rose Paris, I call her, is when you live a life of service and giving, you don't have to worry about what's going to return. It's just destined that you're going to get yours.
Oh yeah.
But live a life of, I'm going to give, and I'm going to give until I can't give anymore.
Yeah.
And live, with that notion.
I don't think I've ever met somebody, and I never thought about this until just now when I was getting ready to ask this question or make this statement. But I don't know if I've ever met somebody who devoted themselves to a life of giving and contribution and service to others. I don't know if I've ever met somebody, heard somebody, read about somebody, and I do a lot of reading, a lot of research. I don't think I've ever met somebody that they didn't get a return on investment. I don't think it's possible, right? Because if your intent is I'm gonna give a life of service, and service doesn't mean, like, I don't think service means to me that you have to be Mother Teresa and that you have to give your entire self, your entire life of everything to service. But when you contribute to the well-being of others, it seems like whenever I get in a state of ego, when I make it about me, and I get in these modes where I don't live up to my best self, it seems that the times that follow are not prosperous. But whenever I step back and I say, how can I contribute to this relationship? How can I contribute to this individual? Not for the sake of what I get out of it, but for the sake of doing the right thing for the right reasons, of helping, it seems like it always pays. Yeah, right? Yeah. It's not possible to not get a return for doing the right thing, this life or the next.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to, the notion of, and my parents are both from the South. So my father from North Carolina, my mother from South Carolina, and so they every summer would send this city kid, right, down to South and North Carolina to try to get him out of the city, right?
Southern eyes,
yes ma'am, yes sir, Southern hospitality, gentlemen. And I would go down and see my grandfather, who was a sharecropper, right? He worked on the land and was gifted, in his particular case, land to farm on. And I saw early on this notion of, typically if you have to plant a seed for anything to harvest, meaning you have to give, you have to put out for anything to harvest, and then you have to cultivate it. So, whether that's, with water or whatever the means is, you have to cultivate that. So you're still
working it.
Now, that harvest may come next week, depending on the crop. That harvest may take years, depending on the crop. But that harvest will come if you plant the seed, you cultivate it, you work it with the intent that there is going to be benefit harvest. But the reality is that you're continuing to give something. Yeah. You're continuing to do something.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whole notion, because I think that in our society today, people, when they plant the seed, they expect the harvest the next day. And we live in this Amazon Prime world, and we think that success and contribution, they could all just, it doesn't. Sometimes you don't know and that's what's so amazing. But I think one of the attributes, your best attribute is, besides your wife, by the way, right, is that you have really learned to cultivate relationships. Like if you would be the expert or the authority in something, and somebody would say, Chad, what is Arnold Greene the authority in? To me, it's about contributing to relationships and maintaining relationships. I mean, I'm saying, how we've known each other 25 years. And when I was 19, I was a dumbass. I mean, I mean, a bigger dumbass than I am now. They're like, well, nothing's changed in 25 years. I mean, a bigger dumbass than I am now. Like I was completely lost, and I was fighting battles that I can't even fathom how I made it out of bed every day. And from the exterior, I wore a mask and a facade, but I was struggling emotionally, financially, in every part of my life. But for some reason, you walk in to the Hyatt Regency Baltimore, where I'd already set up my stereotype. I already had made my role. You know, in the acting world, I'm not an actor, but in the acting world, they say that actors are typecast. Jim Carrey's a comedian, this person's a drama. And I already typecast myself. And my typecast was I was loud, I was big, I'm saying, well, big personality, I'm big physically too, but big personality. But there are very few people, if you were to rewind 25 years ago, that would say Chad was ever going to amount to anything in life. Yeah. Like, if even be alive at this age. But for some reason, there was something, and we were boys, we became boys instantly, but it wasn't about being boys with you, right? It wasn't about, like, that's not what you were trying to get at with me, right?
Yeah, you know, I guess back to this notion of seeing the potential in someone, you know, and people doing that for me. So while I saw you as, you know, some of the same attributes, you know, while I would say others may have seen you with the same attributes as you just suggested, you know, I saw somebody that could use that big personality in a very positive way. I saw somebody that had the ability to relate with others like most couldn't. I saw somebody that, quite honestly, if just given the right attention, coaching, just authentic friendship. I knew Chad was going to be something special. And so for me, you know, I believe in the power of authenticity. I tell people, be your authentic self. Right now, you were made different than I was. You're, you know, from Maryland, I'm from New York. You know, you're, you know, 6 foot, whatever. I'm barely 6'8". I'm barely hitting 6. You know, the obvious is that you're white and I'm black, right? We're both handsome.
Both handsome.
Both handsome.
Both bald.
Both bald.
And I just read an article that said bald men are much more confident, assertive, successful, beautiful. I wrote the article, but I read it.
Okay. I need to read that article.
There's clearly a lot of difference. You're a Cornell graduate. I don't have a college degree. Yeah. You came into the Hyatt, so, you know, we should tell. So we worked at the Hyatt together. So you came in a 3-piece suit with cufflinks, looking all dapper. I didn't own an iron until I was 25 years old, right? So there's the differences. So why at that point how is there, in this world that we're in now that is so divisive, where people plant flags, right? Whether it's by race, whether it's by gender, whether it's by economic status, whatever it is, mostly by political affiliation now. How does that work? How does that work? Why didn't you just stick to the tribe that was like you, and I stick to the tribe that was like you? How does that work?
Because I've never really cared about I'm gonna say the what of a person, right? So the title, you know, what you are in terms of, I've always been concerned, and still to this day, with the who you are and how you go about, you know, that coming to fruition. And so none of our differences to me made a difference. I mean, it didn't matter to me. What, you know, I appreciated about you and still do to this day, again, getting back to this word that keeps popping in my head, this authentic Chad. I mean, you are a better Chad, right? But you are the same Chad from, you know, when we met each other 19. You still have the same talents, gifting, abilities. You've just, you know, rounded it off. And so, you know, when you get past the what, right? Because the what, to me, always creates the barrier. If somebody's a chief, then that means there's others, there's the tribes, right? If somebody is female, then there's men. That's the what. But if you then really, if you start digging into the, you know, the who they are, just their heart, their being, their person, that's when you can really start cultivating something special. And in my mind, accepting the reality of it is that even if you were a black guy, I had a little bit of hair at that time, and even if you grew up in Queens and you went to Cornell, like some of my, you know, still closest friends went, we would still be different. There's no two people, even your beautiful twin daughters, as we were talking about earlier, there are no two people that are alike. So why don't we finally get past the fact that we're not going to be alike,
Correct.
but let's embrace how we can add to one another's lives.
Yeah, I think that's man, it's so true, because I think that you're right. I never thought about it in the way you just put it so well. It's like we focus so much on the what. On the, like, what this person's title is, what this person's driving, what this person lives in, what this person's color is. But we connected, and I find this with most people that I have my closest relationships with, is that we connect on a moral, spiritual level, right? Like our moral, I think for the most part, yours and my moral code is very in sync. Our spirituality is pretty much in sync, right? We may go to different churches, but we both believe in a God.
That's right.
We both have the same belief system underneath. But in order to get to that point, you have to fight through you have to be willing to fight or break through the what, right? Because the what is what we see at first glance.
Yeah, because to your point, if you don't fight through that, I mean, you just will, I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but you would never get to the depth of the person. You would never get to the point where it doesn't matter if I see Chad, you know, in tomorrow or 25 years from now, there will be this connection and this bond because we took the time to get past the what and our differences and really dig into, you know, just being genuine with one another, you know. And here's another thing that I don't think you appreciated, and I'll share this with you. I think great friendships are also built on being vulnerable to one another, right? And so, you know, while you shared some of the things that, you know, you were facing, there were also times where I needed a reprieve, right? And I needed somebody to talk to, and when you're in HR, not everybody
don't go to the HR office.
Not everybody wants to talk to you, but you know, you were one of the people that I could release to and trust and know that whether it was just listening or you know, adding some levity to the situation, or in a lot of cases you assisting me and coaching me, it's special to me when you can have that vulnerability and it's not just a surface type of relationship.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And I think for me, I talk about this a lot in trainings, and I say it a lot to my kids, that most people have this misnomer about trust. And they believe that when I trust you, I'll be vulnerable with you. But it doesn't work like that, because if I trust you, it's not vulnerability. If I already have a level of trust, see, vulnerability is that this person isn't going to use whatever I say against me at another point, that I can be honest and open and authentic with this person. And so I think what happens is we wait to be vulnerable with somebody until we trust them, and that day will never come if you operate like that. I think what's happened with our relationship, I think with the most important relationships in your life, is I'm willing to be vulnerable. And once I'm vulnerable with it and I see that you don't use it against me, now we have a level of trust. And I think I specifically recall days where you're in HR and I always believed ever since high school, as soon as I could get a job, I got a job. I worked at McDonald's all through high school. I brought sexy back to work at McDonald's. I was the fry guy.
You were mixed sexy.
Oh man, I'm telling you what, it was not cool to work at McDonald's, and then I worked at McDonald's, and all of my friends started working at McDonald's. It was sexy to work at McDonald's. I had the golden French fries, I had the golden spatula, I had the golden mop. Anyway, so I worked all through high school at McDonald's, and then I get this job at the Hyatt. And I always believed, I was a hard worker, but I got in trouble a lot. I'd call off, I wouldn't come to work, I'd say stupid shit, I'm saying, the reason you and I built such a strong relationship so fast, because your first 60 days I was in your office 60 times, right? I just start my day off, all right, what did I do wrong today? And you could have fired me. You could have had me fired. Robert Steele, who's a great friend, we'll talk about in a couple minutes, both of ours, a mentor, you didn't do that. And there's a level of vulnerability that I was like, wow, what the hell is going on here? How come I haven't been fired yet? And it wasn't because I was a good worker. There was something else there. And that was this guy could absolutely fire me right now. I didn't come to work this week. I showed up hungover. More days than I wasn't hungover. But you didn't fire me. And that built a level of trust, because I was able to be vulnerable with you. I was able to tell you the battles I was fighting, the demons I was fighting. But at the same time, you didn't make it easy. See, we think our friendships are about making it easy, but the people we need in our life most are the ones that give us the most radical candor, the most real conversation. Hey, listen, Chad, there was never a pity party for me when I walked in the office. Hey, listen, you got to make better choices. You got to do this, you got to do that. And I would look at you as somebody who had it together, had it together in the sense of, graduate from Cornell, dressed well, had the ear of Robert Steele. And I'm like, man, I want all these things. And so eventually, slowly, I started submitting my ego to you, which is hard, because in the rest of the world, in the rest of my life, I didn't submit my ego to them. It was all about me. But in you, it didn't have to be about me. It could be about how do I become better, and how do I learn from you?
Yeah. And wow. That was a moment there for me, because, I always, people may look as you did at me and thought I, always had it together. And the reality is I didn't, right? And there were people that, and still do, give me grace, I call it, right? I mean, my wife is the biggest grace giver in my life.
That's
and
a good
I'm
title,
thankful
grace giver.
and fortunate to have her in my life. But I think, when you can, my first job before I got to the Hyatt was with the National Center for Disability Services, right? And the National Disability Services, they had a school from K to 12 with all students of disabilities. That's all it was. And then they had an arm that we were advocates. At the time, I traveled around the country and trained companies on what was then starting as the Americans with Disabilities Act. And one of their phrases was walk a mile in my shoes, right? And every day that I was in the office, I would go and spend some time with these kids that were faced with extraordinary, as we would say, extraordinary challenges. And they were the most positive, the most forgiving. Another kid would fall, they pick them up, they encourage them, they'd rub their head, they'd say, you can do it, you can do it. And I always, thought about, here are individuals that are facing challenges, and if no one gave them opportunities to succeed, which this school was phenomenal for that. Their obvious chances of success would be less if nobody had grace for, quote unquote, their disability. Their opportunities would be challenged. And so with that, I start with the potential in someone, but then I recognize in my frailties and who I am that mistakes are made every day, all day, right? And, who are you going to go to bat for? Who are you going to sit down and look in the eyes and tell the truth? And that truth comes with a lot of positive, and that truth sometimes comes with, some serious, perspective in terms of how you can do something better. But that grace has to be there in order, in my mind, for there to be an effective, tangible relationship. That understanding that Chad's going to make mistakes, Arnold's going to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, if we just stick through this and to this, something special is going to happen.
I love that. Wow. I love that. And I think one of the things you touched on a little bit, and that's, there's people that like to force feed you the truth, and there's people that lead you to trip over the truth. And for you, that's what you did. You helped me trip over the truth. And you do that by a couple of different ways. You do that by leading by example. You follow me, and eventually I go, gosh, man, I want to be like that. I want to aspire to those qualities that Arnold has, and I start to trip over that kind of truth. Or you lay it out in a way that go, gosh, man, he is right. He is right. There is a different level of me. I got to figure out. I got to work out these issues, and I got to overcome them. I think that's to me that's a sign of a true leader, right? That is able to get you to trip over the truth and is able to be alongside you through the whole ride. And that was what was great, right? You were alongside me the whole time. And now, so as you have progressed your career, you talked about it a little bit. You talk about mentors and coaches. Right? I coach you, you coach me, and people are coaching each other. And I think you can learn a lot from. Doesn't matter. You can learn a lot from a guy pushing a broom. You can learn a guy in the CEO. Same, right? Everybody has a platform in this world. And so, who are some of those mentors for you that you say, man? We talk about the ones in your formative years, but who are some of those mentors that you're like, gosh, these are the people that helped get me here?
Yeah, Robert L. Steele III, who was our general manager at the Hyatt, for me, really set the tone for what I would say a man of professional excellence should look like, talk like, how he cared about his team, sometimes 1,500 people in that hotel, but he called it managing by walking around, and he tried to talk to as many people on a daily basis. He cared. I mean, he set the tone for me. I mean, he took a young guy that was moving down to Maryland for love. Donnie coerced me to move down to. She didn't coerce me, but she influenced me with her beauty.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they do. They do that shit.
Exactly.
Do that shit. I'm trying to figure out that Jedi mind trick out because it's been 18 years. I'm trying to figure out how she gets me to do half the shit I do. Like, no, I'm not doing it. And then 5 minutes later, I'll be doing exactly what she told me.
Yeah. But he for me, most importantly, was just a man of his word. When I first came down to Maryland, I left New York and came down to find a job so I can be with my then girlfriend, Donnie. And Zeke Marshall, who went to college with me, and he says, you got to meet this guy at the Hyatt. Okay. And so I go down to the Hyatt, and we're standing in the lobby, and Mr. Steele comes out, and literally maybe 3 to 5 minutes we have conversation, and he's asking about me, what brings you down here? I gave my elevator speech, and, he says, hey, should I ever have anything in human resources, I would love to have you as a part of the team. And, I met this guy 3 to 5 minutes, right? But he had a relationship with Zeke, so there was a trust there. And so fast forward, maybe about a year and a half later, I was working for a Heckinger Stores company at the time, a home improvement company. And I'm walking through his lobby now. Robert Steele met hundreds of people probably daily. I'm walking through, hadn't talked to Mr. Steele in literally a year and a half, and I hear somebody say, Arnold. And I'm shocked. I turned, it's Mr. Steele. And first of all, I'm saying to myself, how in the world does this guy know me, remember me?
Yeah.
But knows my name. And he says, hey man, I haven't forgotten about you. And we parted. I get a call about a month and a half later, and it's from Sandra Mitchell, who was in human resources at the time, and says, hey, we have a human resources position. Mr. Steele told me to give you a call, and we'd love for you to come in the interview. And I mean, then the rest is history relative to the hire. But just a man of his word, a man of commitment, someone that, I was able as a young professional. I was only 24. I mean, it seemed like we were 15 years apart when you were 19 and I was 24.
You were only 24.
But I was only 24, and here was, this gentleman that not only brought me in to the Hyatt, but daily took time with me to, help me. And the same conversations, Chad, that maybe I was having with you, it's probably because there was a product coming through Robert to me, for me.
Yeah, right. And contributing it back.
I was contributing back. And I'll never forget, I've kept this as, part of what I try to do and how I try to live, because there's a number of mentors, Bill Clowney, Kevin Henry, Harry Coxum, Kenneth Reeves, who you've met, there's a number of people that have really imparted, but I start with Mr. Steele. And I'll never forget, because, this guy poured so much into me. Like, I felt an onus to him. Like, what can I do, Mr. Steele, to repay you for the time that you spend with me, the lessons, the taking me to, I started motivational speaking because of Mr. Steele, because I was his ghostwriter for some of his speaking, and he turned to me and said, Arnold, you need to do that. So what can I do to repay you? And he says, Arnold, the only thing I want you to do is give what I'm giving to you to some others. And for me, that has stuck with me since 1994, 95, when he's told me that one of my priorities in life, Chad, is whatever has been imparted into me is to transfer that to others and help them along, and not just keep it to myself.
Wow. And so what do you think, so Robert Steele, wow, he was that guy, right? He was that guy, larger than life. I talk about him all the time in my seminars, where, he was the guy who lived in the hotel, dressed great, had just an aura of wisdom and authority about him, but didn't seem unapproachable. And so, you've kind of become that. Right? Now there's people that you're, human capital officer, the huge investment bank.
Yes, investment bank.
Yep. And so you have people now. Do you realize when you stop and you kind of think about it, that 25 years later you become, for lack of better words, the modern day Robert Steele in their eyes? And if you stop and have gratitude or think about that for a moment, and this enormity, like, how does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, I'm humbled again when, people like yourself, would even think that I've added value to their life, right? So, and I'm very thankful and grateful for all that God has blessed me with. And so I've never really thought more of myself other than, here's this kid, grew up in Queens, that my path has led me a number of different ways, but at the end of the day, to be able to assist others and share with others, and if to be even equated with Mr. Steele is an honor for me. I'm just trying to do my part in giving back. I'll share this one story that, there are times in life where you need a check, right? Like you need to really evaluate and have I'm going to say a moment in time that helps you really pause and say, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And so we were living, speaking of McDonald's, I was working for McDonald's Corporation, and we were living in Bluebell, Pennsylvania, and I think my daughter was about 11 or 12, Gigi, and
who's at NYU now, right? NYU, getting ready to graduate.
About to graduate, yeah, we're pretty proud of her. And unfortunately, one of her friends, Nathan, he was killed. He was riding a skateboard, I think it was, went into the street, car hit him, died. And I'm not a big funeral person, Chad. That's never been something that I've enjoyed. But Gigi wanted me to go to this funeral with her. And so he was a Jewish young man, and I'll never forget the rabbi's sermon, and it has stuck with me. And so she is now 20, about to be 21, so that was 8-9 years ago. But that was my check. He started his sermon, and he says, basically, the title of my sermon is, "What's in Your Dash?" And he says, so, Nathan was born in whenever he was born, right? And he lived to whatever year that was. But what we really have to reckon with and what we really have to evaluate was what's in Nathan's dash. And they go on to talk about Nathan and all he was doing and how he was serving and helping others. And it really re-energized me to really think about, Arnold, what's in your dash? Like, born 1970 and hope to live for another 40, 50 years, God willing, 60, 70. But what's in your dash? And, when people or when whoever eulogizes me, they're not going to be talking about, oh, he was chief human capital officer. That might be a blip on the obituary, but that's not what. So what will that, ceremony, what will people be saying about me? And, I'm littered with warts and things that I don't do well. But I'm really laser focused, and since that day on, kind of what's going to be my legacy, what's in my dash. So when you ask me about, what other people think about you, I am intentional about hopefully they'll think that, I've lived a life of service. I've lived a life of giving to others. I've lived a life of caring for my family. My family is my world, and it begins there and ends there for me. But externally, I want people to believe, understand, and know, back to this authenticity word, that, Arnold, hopefully I'll leave out of here where people will say Arnold was his authentic self. Mm. When you met me when I was 24, and now I'm 48, and hopefully get to 98, that not much has changed in core
Yeah.
about Arnold, that I am Arnold Al Greene, the same kid that grew up in tough circumstances that has been blessed to have a little bit more now.
Mm. That's so good. That's so good. I think that, I don't even know what the response to that is, except to say I think it takes a long time for people to figure that shit out. I think the reason I know that, well, I mean, I shouldn't talk about people, I should say me. So for me, it's taken a long time for me to figure out what you just said. Even though people would say it back then, and you could hear it, and you could read it, this is to go through this evolution, this metamorphosis of understanding that life is about the contributions, and about the sacrifice, about the service you make for others. And when you get out of, you talked about at the beginning of the show, get out of the me mindset and into the we mindset, your world starts to change. When I talk all the time, I think Deepak Chopra was the one that said it. If it's not, I forget who it was, but said for ego stands for edging God out. It's not about God, it's about me. And when I first heard that, I tried to make sense of it. EGO, edging God out, ego. And what I realized was that it's okay. It's okay. God created you to have a life of abundance.
Yeah.
Abundance of success, abundance of love, abundance of health, abundance of contribution, abundance of service. And not living up to that was true ego. Because I know better than God. Somehow God messed up on me. Right? And it took me a long time to figure that out. It seems like you're right, it's embracing this authentic self. I always thought I had to be somebody else. But it wasn't until I accepted myself, showed myself self-love, that I realized, no, I have to embrace myself and stop with the facades and stop with right?
There's only, again, stating the obvious, right? But God created Chad to be Chad Sanchagrin.
Yeah.
Not Arnold Greene, not Gary V.
No.
Not anybody else. I love what you, because I talked about me, but you talked about the power of we. I think there is an incredible impact when we embrace the power of we, when we take these nuggets from others, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fabric of who Chad Sanchagrin is. Yeah. I feel like I'm sitting, and having a conversation from 20 some odd years, because the fabric has not changed much. Much wiser, Chad, smarter. I don't know about handsome.
More handsome. I definitely am more handsome as I get older. The bald look, I was fighting the bald look for a while, and then the island started getting smaller, and I could have just done the horseshoe, and I just went full bald, and it's definitely more beautiful.
Yeah, but the fabric of you is, and how I just look at on social media, just who you have become. Same core, but just really pushing and as Drake says on one of his songs, leveled up, has just taking the next levels and iterations of who Chad is. It's special to see. It's special.
Yeah, likewise. And I think what people confuse or don't understand is that, man, I still fight battles every day. Every day I still doubt myself, self-worth, or doubt myself. I don't show myself self-love, and I still have this critic in my head that wants to say, you're living an imposter life. The only difference now isn't that I don't have the battles, it's that I know how to win them more. Because I used to lose them every day, and I make the wrong decision, I make the wrong choice, and I let the critic in my head take over. And now when the critic in my head goes off and says, you're not this, or you can't accomplish that, or who do you think you are, and it sets in, I know how to tame the critic. The critic never leaves, it's just you know how to tame them more. So, at least for me.
A great philosopher, her name is Donnie T. Greene.
Donnie T. Greene.
Right. We all go through self-doubt. We all have challenges. We all have situations that we face, And I'm fortunate that she's taught me the lesson of the power of remembrance, she calls it, the power of remembrance. And it's been so powerful, pun intended, for me, because anytime I get to a point of self-doubt, that power of remembrance clicks in, and I can look back to when I had similar doubt and was able to overcome. And I keep on pushing, right? Anytime I get to a point in my career, as an example, that I say, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue to advance the career or whatever, or I come up against a scenario in work that is challenging, I always have the power of remembrance, right? I always have the power of remembrance. Anytime, finances aren't the way that you would love it to be, you always have the power of remembrance.
That's just good.
So I've been, fortunate, again, that notion of we. It was me. Now it's we, and that's not only my family, but others in my, circle, that, I always have someone that helps me with that power of remembrance. But more importantly, I have to help myself with that. I have to, lean into myself and remember the successes and remember the challenges. To me, they come to make you strong, right? And it's just a part of life. No pain, no gain, right? And all the cliches we hear, but they're real. It's real life, right?
They're cliches because that shit is good and it's real.
That's right, right? So, I try to, as I battle, you mentioned that sometimes, daily, weekly with various things, I always can take a quick look back and say, been there, done that. Might be a higher mountain, but we're going to climb this one. Yeah. And let's keep moving forward.
Love that. All right, last two questions.
Yes, sir.
So I have direct access to you. Right. I got the bat line. I got the bat line right to you. Right. So I can get a hold of you like through your 45 different, secretaries and advances. I got the secret way in. But how do people find you? If they want to learn more about Arnold Greene, how do they connect? Where do they follow you? Where do they get some more Greene love?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Arnold L. Greene. So certainly feel free to connect there. On social media, Instagram hasn't worked very well for me.
I'm a big Insta person. I think this is a sign of my age. I'm more. I find myself being more. I like Instagram better than Facebook. Yeah. I love Facebook, but I'm a big Instagram person.
Yeah. So I'm on both. I'm on Instagram, Greene MRG, Greene with an E, MRG, and then Facebook, A. Lee Greene.
A. Lee Greene. That's just a cool name, A. Lee Greene.
Yeah.
You don't even have to spell it out for people. Like for me, like Chad Sanchkin, like what Sancha what? Like this shit's all convoluted. Just start typing S with a whole bunch of letters, you'll find it. Shit anyway. So listen, if you haven't heard this guy speak, read some of his stuff, followed him, do it now because listen, I've known him for 25 years. That just sounds crazy to say. 25 years, and man, I don't know many wiser people, and I get to interview some of the greatest minds in the country, some great authors, great human beings. But if you want wise, you want deep, and you want full circle from spirituality to love and family. If the one thing that if you only got to know one piece of somebody, for me, looking at how they love their family, and by love their family I mean show it in their actions, show it how they talk when they're not around. So we did our podcast pre-call, and I think after an hour of doing the call and having the conversation, I had to let you know that this wasn't a tribute podcast to Danisha and your kids, because every other word is about Danisha and your kids. So like, yeah, I know, she's great. Yes, we're going to name a statue after her. We're going to build a bridge after her. I get it. I understand. But I say that tongue in cheek, but I think that you can tell a lot about somebody about how they love their family. For me, that is a instant connection. How you talk about your parents, and how you talk about your family is crucial. I grew up without a father, and even having grown up by a single mother, hearing people badmouth or discuss in a negative light any of the people that brought him on into this earth, or the people that helped support him in this earth, is a huge indicator about the core value of a person. And so, to me, that's one of my biggest attractions to you is the way that you love your family. It's such a great attribute.
There's no doubt about it. I love them, and just fortunate that God chose them for me.
Love that.
And they experienced some of my deepest, darkest moments at times, but more importantly, they bring me the most gratitude of anything that I do. So
that's my favorite word, right?
Gratitude. That's why I used it.
Favorite
Gratitude.
word. Gratitude is to me is the secret weapon. It's the secret sauce, man. Be grateful for the life you have. If you wake up to each day with gratitude, I'm telling you, it's the Superman cape nobody talks about.
Yes, sir.
All right, last question. First of all, thanks. I'm saying we gotta do this again.
Thank you.
We talked earlier that we're gonna do this in barbershop chairs.
Barbershop. Let's do it.
Like we ain't got no hair. We're going to a barbershop. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna just rap like LeBron does in the shop. Right? We're gonna talk about basketball in that podcast and talk about how LeBron's the best ever. And people right now disconnected. Like, what MJ? And then you got some fool gonna talk about Kobe. But that's a whole nother conversation. But last question. And you answered it so well, I almost wanted to just rewind it, but I want you to sum it up in a couple words, and that is, when you leave this earth, 50 years now, 60 years from now, whenever it may be, what do you want your contribution to have been?
Simply a life of service that I gave, that I cared, and that I loved.
I gave, I cared, and I loved. Like, how don't you want to follow this guy? Shit. I came, I gave, I cared, and I loved. That's it, folks. Listen, find Arnold Greene, connect with him, because he is the real freaking deal. And he's a good friend of mine.
Love you, man.
Thank you, brother. Awesome.